of all of our recording in progress. I love that voice. Who gets to do that voice? Anyway, delighted to have you all here today. And as Vicky said, I'm the program coordinator for the creative advertising program at Humber College, the bachelor's degree there. And on our panel today, we have, starting up, we've got Holly Gallacher, who is the design lead for Daughter Creative in Calgary. Holly's originally from Scotland and has previously worked both agency and freelance in London. And her main focus is in branding and visual identity. And her work has been featured in British Vogue, the New York Times, and GQ magazine. So welcome, Holly. We also have Zachary Richman, who is a copywriter at Taxi, and his creative partner, Logan Franklin, who is an art director also at Taxi. They've worked on a wide range of top-tier clients through their careers, and most recently were wildly successful at the Canadian Marketing Awards, where their work for Volkswagen won Best of the Best, which is super cool achievement. I hope we might hear a little bit about that at some point in the presentation. I'm also extra happy to see these two guys because I got to admit they're both former students of mine, so that makes me super happy to see them. So welcome, Zach and Logan. And we also have Michael Pitropov, who's a Toronto-based freelance director, illustrator, and animator. And as a director at his own studio, mippy.tv, that's MIPP.tv, if you want to check it out. He has also worked with a lot of top-tier clientele, including Google, sorry, that was my cat, Sony, totally threw me off. He's worked with lots of top-tier clientele, including Google, Sony, Dropbox, Deloitte, and Wired. Welcome, Michael. So to get us started off, I'm going to hand it over to Holly, and away we go.
Yep. Great, thank you. Cool. I'm going to share my screen, and once I share it, I can't see you anymore. So I hope that it works. Can you all see that?
That's good. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. So I was kicking things off with a little intro about me. So my name is Holly Gallacher. I'm originally from Scotland. I graduated in 2013 from Duncan and Johnson College of Art and Design. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that's the university in Dundee. So I did an honours degree in graphic design from there. I actually originally wanted to do animation. So I did a year course also in the other university in Dundee on that. I quickly realized that it wasn't for me. I think maybe there was a lack of patience going on there or something, but you know, I had to kind of do a bit of a pivot in that first year, and I chose to go to art school. And what was really good about the art school was in the first year you do a foundation course, so you got to try a little bit of everything. So it was like fine art, sculpture, jewelry design, just like every single kind of subject. And I was really quite bad at a lot of those things. But the thing that stuck was the design course. And I wasn't even fully committed to that. It just felt like the best thing at the time. And I went with that. And then I realized that that's definitely what I wanted to do. So when I graduated, I did a exhibition down in London, hosted by D&AD, which is kind of similar to Applied Arts, but the UK version. And they hosted a new graduate showcase. We took our work down there, and the hope is that employers or just people involved in the creative industry walk around, look at your work and want to take you on as an intern, or I even know some people that just got a job straight off the bat just going there. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking, and you're standing in a space with every other design graduate in the UK. So yeah, it's a little bit intimidating, but I got quite fortunate of that, and my first boss picked up on my work. I moved down to London, and essentially just spent the next 5 years working there at a couple of different agencies. And then I also went freelance towards the end of my time there. Then I moved to Canada in 2018. So I've been in Calgary since then. And I worked as a designer at Daughter Creative. And then this year I switched kind of titles to design lead. So I head up the design team at Daughter at the moment. So that's a very quick snapshot of my intro kind of into the creative world. And what I'd like to do is just like take you through just some of the projects I've worked on in the past 8 years, which feels like a long time, but I'm hoping that it's quite interesting just to see kind of from my student work to present day, and just the kind of I don't know, just the kind of variability of projects that I've worked on, and all the different kind of categories that kind of go in and out of. So to start off with, this was my final year kind of showcase of work. We had to do a self-initiated brief. I'm really into like weird societies and cults and stuff like that. So I did some like deep internet digging and found the Flat Earth Society, who are now actually quite prevalent and stand maybe for not, they're not in the best light. But at the time they were quite underground, and no one really knew of them. So the brief to myself was to, like, through a rebrand, could I make the Flat Earth Society look legitimate, and basically are they able to attract new members just through the power of their branding? So this was quite an intensive project because I just tried to tackle everything. So this is from like poster design, recreating these like world maps, to like membership kind of paraphernalia, business cards, membership cards, to editorial. So they actually had existing materials that I kind of could pull the content from, which was nice. So I recreated their entire handbook, trying to communicate these like just weird ideas and beliefs through design and through kind of illustration and these abstracted visuals. This went to like book design and what does that look like, and kind of wrapping that all together. And most recently, this is a project that has followed me for my entire life. It kind of crops back up once a year. And most recently, I'm launching like a virtual t-shirt line for the Flat Earth Society through like an NFT marketplace. So it's kind of like followed its way through the 8 years to current day, and kind of pouncing a little bit on that new tech, and seeing if it can exist in that world. So this was my graduate project. And then just to fly through some of the really like initial work that I did in London as a designer, it was quite scary, I think, moving from uni straight into work. I was quite terrified, and there was a lot of saying yes to stuff that I didn't really feel too confident doing, but a lot of learning on the job and just kind of seizing every opportunity to do work. So this is one of my first branding projects for an architect firm in London. So, looking at stationery design, stuff like that. This then went to like packaging design. This is for a jewelry kind of company, I guess. So looking a bit into packaging, how that works, kind of getting my mitts into that a little bit. Vinyl record design. This is also some photography on the right. You can see there, this was focusing on like light leaks that happen during kind of film photography, and using that as the medium to try and communicate the music that was on this record. Editorial design. So this is for British Arts Council as part of a traveling exhibition of artists. So kind of getting involved in print and publication design as well. this then led to some fashion design and branding, which I kind of got into a lot more in my time in London. I also do some of that freelance as well. Worked on a bunch of t-shirt designs alongside David Bailey, who's a photographer. He's kind of really big in like the 60s and 70s. This went into Selfridges in London. So the labeling, the identity, and the artwork for that using his kind of portfolio of photography. Even down to like, you know, the graphics and visuals and all of that stuff that appears on clothing. This was a brand that we created in-house called Suns. So kind of like a whole different section of the brain, trying to work with textiles and kind of learning a lot about the kind of fusion of graphic design and fashion design with that. And then I made just loads of t-shirts and just loads of stuff. This is all a lot of freelance work, but you can see how kind of like that development of identity into fashion design just led me to doing a bunch of artworks for various brands. And then into this is more freelance work before I started at Daughter. So FaZe Clan are an esports team, creating their kit and kind of like their digital presence and their rebrand and their refresh. Select Models, which is a model agency in kind of various cities across the world. So they needed a little refresh to their identity just to kind of bring them a bit more into the current. And what we did with them is really focused in on their digital presence and making sure we could get some like motion and movement into there. And then into some work at Daughter. So Bow Valley College is a college here in Calgary. They needed like a full 360 brand refresh. So we really tried to bring in that vibrancy, you know, really make them stand out amongst competitors and try and make it reflect the kind of diversity and accessibility that the college is known for. And that we ran an ad campaign alongside that. Even down to, this is identity work for a blockchain company. So you really do learn a lot about different I guess occupations and just like different kind of categories going on. So this is like web design, you know, environmental design for a blockchain company called Oro, down to packaging. So we do a lot of work with the local breweries here. Annex, who is a brewery, they needed a new brand system for their short-term cans. So we really wanted something that felt like it reflected the craft and the kind of details that went into their brewing process. So we did that through kind of visual artwork and making it feel like they have this brand presence when they're stocked alongside their competitors. And just ending on a final project here for Radical, who are a company who specialize in tackling or just kind of creating solutions to tackle climate change. And we really wanted to kind of draw on like the natural world. We use this coral color as their primary color. This was kind of inspired by like protest posters and that exclamation mark kind of forming that middle I in their word mark there. And this was accompanied by a campaign kind of like showing their brand existing in this natural world and, you know, how they move throughout that. So that's a whirlwind tour of of my career thus far, but I'm hoping it, you know, it shows just a little bit of the range of things that I've been involved in and the range of work that, you know, a designer can take on throughout their career. So yeah.
That is super cool. Holly, that is a really, really interesting work. And I'm struck by the range, and the range not both sort of in client, in media, in style. And I'm just as a curiosity, how much intentionality, I guess, is there in the way you've sort of changed and progressed as a designer and the work that you've done? Have you sought particular types of work, or has it found you? Or, you know, if you were to look at that pathway you've gone through on that work, is there anything you can identify as I say, sort of intentional in it?
I don't really think I do. I do much with intention. I feel like I've been, you know, very fortunate and very lucky to kind of have found or have opportunities find me. But I also think a lot of that is down to like I've always been quite, or I guess kind of made it a priority to get my work up and out and you know, make sure that it's able to be seen. Like when I went to when we first did that exhibition, the graduate exhibition in London, we have our work up, you have your name tag and your business cards and stuff. And I actually was not there for the day that my future boss came around, but my name tag had fallen off. I'd run out of business cards. There was like no, there was no one around to ask, you know, like whose work is this? Luckily I think I had like my name printed on the bottom of something, and he Googled me, misspelled my name, but still found like my website and was able to contact me that way. So I'm always kind of a bit of an advocate for making sure that people can just like find you,
Yeah.
you know, and make sure that, I mean, I'm kind of not too great at, you know, keeping my folio updated or my website updated or whatever. But I think that part of it kind of just makes things easier on yourself to have opportunities. And I think also just saying yes to a lot of stuff, like, you know, if there is a, you know, a little extra job to do, or you know, even in agency with a team, just like kind of seizing every opportunity that you can. And I think making those connections can really help as well with just attracting work and, you know, having more stuff to do.
Good. Great advice. Certainly the jumping in and grabbing whatever comes your way is, you know, you never know what doors are going to open that way, which is one of the cool things about the profession. That's terrific. Thank you very much. And so let's move over to Zach and Logan, and your adventures at Taxi, and how'd you get here?
Awesome. Thanks. We're going to share a little presentation. Let's give us one sec here. Perfect. Yeah, so let's just jump into it. So I'm Zach, and I'm doing this presentation with my partner, Logan. We're creative partners together. I'm the copywriter. I write words and stuff, and he is the art director and makes everything look really good. We started as, we kind of started our career as interns at a place called FCB, and that's where we kind of paired together, and we kind of continued growing there in our career, and eventually made the move to a place called Taxi, which is where we're currently at. And at Taxi, we're predominantly working on work for Volkswagen, which is really exciting. It's a really like iconic advertising brand. But on top of that, we worked on a whole breadth of different types of work. We've done like BMW, BMO, a whole bunch of lottery, some tourism, some Michelob Ultra, Christie Cookies, like a whole bunch of different types of work, which is a really fun part about this industry. Like as you get to like flex your creative muscles and like come up with cool ideas, you get to touch all these different facets of different types of industries, jumping from beer to cars to tourism. It's always fresh because you always get to work on a really interesting new industry, and flex different types of ideas, which is, you know, just a really fun part about this biz. So we're also going to show you some work that we have done together as a team. Of course, like through your career, you'd be making a whole bunch of different types of stuff, from like, you know, the traditional things like print and like TV spots and radio. But really these days, a lot of advertising ends up being a lot about like doing what we call activations, or things in the real world, like just like really interesting like things that you can do to like in different types of unique spaces to really like showcase a brand's message in a really unique and unexpected way. And kind of a good example of that is this first piece here that we'll be showing, which is called the Carbon Neutral Net. And this was our one of our most recent pieces of work that we did for Volkswagen. And what it was, this is something we think is really cool. And it's to launch Volkswagen's all new, like all electric SUV, which is called the ID4. To do that, we wanted to do something a little special to like launch the car and like showcase like the sustainability of it all, because it's a really like, it's all electric, so it's a really sustainable vehicle. And like through some of our digging, and you'll find like in this biz, there's a lot of just like brainstorming and doing research of insights and finding like unique things and different ways in. While we were kind of undergoing that process, we found this really cool insight that the internet actually has a carbon footprint, and it makes up around 4% of like the global carbon footprint, which is actually around the same as the airline industry. So 4% may not sound like a lot, but in actuality, it really is. And we kind of just found that insight and came up with a really cool idea for it. And we're like, okay, like if we're launching Volkswagen's new all-electric SUV, what if we took their website, Volkswagen's website, and just made it the most sustainable website ever? And what we kind of did is we replaced every photo on vw.ca with ASCII text, which is like, so there's no more JPEGs, no more PNGs in this website. It's all like live text that you could actually like, you know, like highlight with your cursor and everything. Which and like through like a simple exercise. It sounds simple, but it was very complicated, especially for my partner Logan with the design process. But through that, we were able to make the website 99% cleaner than over 2 million sites tested, and we got that verified by a third party. So this was like just I think a really good example of like how like advertising these days isn't really just like here's a headline and an image, or here's a commercial. Well, that stuff does still exist, but I would say like the real heart of the biz right now is stuff like this. Like things are just like, oh, this is a cool thing that we did in an unexpected, unique space. And this was actually like, yeah, I think just a really good example of that. And it's something that we're really proud of. Yeah, so that's our first piece of work.
Next up, we wanted to touch on a project that we worked on a few years ago for BMO called the ABM. So this is back when BMO used to sponsor the Raptors. It was playoff season. They wanted to do something fun for Jurassic Park. So we kind of had this idea where what if we took an actual ATM and kind of retrofitted it to become a basketball net. So what we loved about this and why we wanted to share this one is because with advertising, it's not always just doing like a social post or a billboard. It's kind of like we were sketching out this like, oh, what if this ATM turned into a basketball net? What if it actually dispensed basketballs? And we actually, got to create this thing that we dreamed up in our heads. So, that's what's fun about this industry is it's not always very simple ideas. It's not just a social post, it's creating whatever you want and then finding the team to actually help create that and make it come to life. So for this, we got to work with, a technologist, an engineer. So that way it's actually functioning. So when you put in your bank card, it actually dispensed basketballs, you play on it, and it would actually reload for the next player. So it was a great thing. We set this up in Jurassic Park. Everyone got to play on it, won some prizes. It was just a really fun project, and it's a good example of what you can kind of do in the real world, apart from, things online.
Actually, if we could just go back for a sec, I think like what I love about this one is that like I'm pretty sure this started as like a sketch on a napkin, just like a stupid idea that we were just like one day like, oh, cool, what if this happened? And then the next thing we know, we have, as Logan mentioned, we have all these engineers and creative technologists like just making it happen. And we're like, oh, okay. And that's like a really just cool thing about this biz. You can have like an idea, and then suddenly, boom, you have 12 people helping you make it happen. And it's just a really fun part about the biz. Yeah, going on to the next one though. We have, this is another thing that we did for Volkswagen called Adopt a VW. And although like the past two examples were like here, like cool activations, like real world experiences or digital experiences that like bring a brand to life, this is a little more traditional. This was like a spot that we made for pre-owned Volkswagens. And what this whole campaign ended up being about, we essentially made an adoption campaign, but for vehicles. So like it was like, you know, all the language, all like the imagery is all about like, you know, the type of stuff you would typically see if you were like watching a spot about adopting a dog in a shelter. But we would like have that twist reveal where we're like, oh no, we're not talking about adopting a dog. We're talking about adopting a Volkswagen. And it's just like kind of like, even though there's a bit more of a traditional example, like this was a TV spot, and then we had social posts and banner ads that kind of go along with it with these like really fun headlines. This campaign's a bit more traditional, but I think it's still a good example of how like you could still come up with really unique insights that just like kind of make you view a product or a category in a new light. We were really happy that we were able to kind of stumble upon the insight that like buying an old Volkswagen is like adopting a dog, and kind of make a really like fun campaign out of that. And like just finding those like insights is such a rewarding thing about this industry as you kind of like push yourselves to like brainstorm and think of really cool concepts. And that's why we really love this one.
Then one last one that we wanted to kind of share, just to, again, show a breadth of, you know, the kind of work that you can do in this industry, is the peelable posters. So this was for Ontario tourism. The whole kind of concept behind this was to inspire Ontarians to kind of rediscover and explore their own backyards. Because, you know, a lot of the times when you live in a certain place, you don't really necessarily want to explore that place. You think, oh, I live here. You know, I don't really want to spend my vacation here. I'm going to go travel somewhere else. So this was all about getting Ontarians to kind of realize there's different unique experiences within Ontario in places where you haven't necessarily seen. There's a huge array. So what we did was we took this user-generated content from Instagram. We kind of crop these out and create these die-cut layers and layer them on top of each other to kind of create this fantastical scenes that don't actually exist. But as people kind of explore it, they can peel back the different layers, and on the back it reveals where in Ontario those places actually are, to inspire them to actually go travel to, you know, where those mountains and beach are, or, you know, where that tower is, or those buildings are. And we wanted to share this one just because, again, it's a kind of a nice way to take a traditional medium like print, but kind of elevate it, have it more interactive and fun. And it's a good way to show, like, you know, different elements of design, how you can kind of work that in if it's something you're passionate about. There's always really interesting ways to kind of work what you love into the work that you're actually creating. So that's it for the work that we wanted to share. And then we just wanted to briefly kind of go into how we actually got started into the industry. So I'm just gonna stop sharing. Oh, stop share. So personally, in high school, I knew that I wanted to do something in art and design. I wasn't really sure what to do. I didn't know whether I'd go photography or maybe I'd just do graphic design. And then by chance, I kind of stumbled into advertising as a career. And I realized it kind of gave me that flexibility to do everything. Like, there's projects that are more photography based where I'm on the photo shoots. There's more film based ones where you're filming commercial, or you're working on illustrations. So what I loved about that was you could kind of be flexible and you're always working on new projects. So once I realized, you know, this was a really good route for me, it was a pretty streamlined process, to be honest. I went to school for creative advertising. From there, I got my internship and then got hired on full time through that. And then just been in the industry ever since. So once I kind of found out this was the route I went, I found it very easy to kind of find the right path to get myself into the industry.
Yeah, and then for me, you know what, kind of similar to Logan. I had a media studies class in high school, and there's this one unit about advertising. And at the time, I was actually interested in design. Like I was like messing around with Photoshop and Illustrator and all this stuff, and I was like thinking about going to advertising. And on a whim, I applied to the Humber creative bachelor of creative advertising, and got in. I was like, okay, let's try this advertising thing. And funny enough, like as I continued my time at in schooling, I decided to switch to copywriting because I realized I actually suck at design, and I'm way better at the words. And I fell in love with writing, and all. I didn't realize I would love it until I kind of was forced to try it at school, which was a really fun surprise for me. But yeah, like I kind of went right into studying it right out of high school, which I feel like is kind of a rare thing. I feel like a lot of people in this biz kind of stumble into it. Like they'll start being like a graphic designer and then kind of stumble their way into art direction with the and like, or some people will like be a marketer and be like, oh, maybe I'll try doing copywriting and go to like a 1-year course and get their way into the biz. But a lot of that happens. But like sometimes you just kind of know that you want to try this advertising thing, and that's kind of what I did. I just kind of knew, went right into this program and started working. And I started at FCB with as an intern, and they paired Logan and I up at some point. And it was a match made in heaven. You know, we've been working together ever since, just advancing in our career, which has been a lot of fun. And yeah, that's kind of how I got started. And yeah, that's what we got for you.
That's so cool. Thanks, guys. A couple of things that kind of leap out for me in terms of what some of the viewers might be interested in. One being the role of insights and creativity, and how so much of what we do creatively is driven by working on figuring out, well, what's really behind all this stuff, and those connect the dots insights that are as much a part of the process as doing the drawings or taking the pictures or working on Photoshop, so it's one of the things that I always kind of want to emphasize with people who want to get into creative professions, is that it's as much about the thinking as it is about the doing. And so I love the way you guys sort of picked that out a bit. One quick question that I want to ask, because I think it also might be of interest to the people watching. What do you think the importance of your internship was because you talked about getting the internship and getting hired out of it, and what do you think the role of internships is in getting in?
I would say the role, it's a really important step of your career, I'd say, mostly because it's where you really start to like really learn. Like obviously you learn a lot in school, and that's where you build your portfolio, and that's so important. That's what gets your foot in the door. But I think my internship was 4 months, and I learned an incredible amount, because you're kind of just thrown into the deep end, and you're suddenly working with all these people who do it every day, and working with like all these creative directors who are like just really like highly acclaimed, and you're kind of just thrown into this world, and there's really nothing that beats experience. I mean, of course, you do get some experience with like these programs, as you like make these ad campaigns for school, but like being just like in the agency space, like nothing teaches you quicker than that. So the internship process, I would say, is just so important, because it just gets you acclimated to the world of advertising, and really gets you like learning, like by surrounding yourselves by all these like incredible, talented people.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Zach. I think a huge part about internships, and why I think they're so important, is that it's a good way to dip your toes in and kind of see what the world is like in advertising. You kind of have a little bit more flexibility as an intern, where like you're not solely responsible for everything. So it's a good way to see what it's like, work on these campaigns and do these things, and kind of get used to everything, without being kind of too terrified, especially if it's like your first kind of dip into like a professional role. you kind of have a lot more mentorship as an intern before you kind of start as whatever entry level you go from there.
Yeah, people understand that's the role that you are an intern. And so, yeah, and certainly I've always known, like in the ad business, people are really good about giving back in that sense, and seeking to mentor people in that internship role. So that's great, super good. Thanks very much, guys. So now let's turn it over to Michael.
Awesome, thank you. Thanks to Applied Arts for having me, and thanks for everyone for sharing your stories. It was super awesome to hear where everyone's coming from. So yeah, it's an honor to go over my story as well. So just to quickly start here, I just wanted to go over my background, and then rather going into like each project that I've done, I think where I could like provide a lot of value for people who are interested in sort of like more illustration and animation focused stuff, or even art direction to some degree, is to go over my process in creating animations, explainer videos, and illustrations. But yeah, I studied illustration at OCAD University. And within my last year, I signed up for a mentorship program there. And while I was studying at university, I really took it upon myself to be very involved in the community and active in any sort of programs or spaces or volunteering, anything that I could do. I was trying to get my hands on that stuff. And when I signed up for the mentorship program, they actually told me like that my portfolio was like kind of like this strange like geometric style that I was working in, and they were like, yeah, like we can't really find anyone who would be a good match for you, because they're more like conceptual designers and less like focused on illustration. And so upon graduating, I was kind of like thinking, okay, I guess I need to get an internship or something like that. And within the last few weeks, they actually got back to me and they said, you know, we actually have this person who'd be really good for you. He's an illustrator and an animator, and his name's Nick Dudukovic, and he's a really talented artist in the city. And he basically introduced me to the world of animation. And before university, I was interested in film and using like also a lot of like Flash and stuff like that. And so it was sort of this interesting mixture of illustration and animation, and super appealing to me. So I began animating and actually self-teaching myself on YouTube back then. And these days, there's a lot better ways that you can go about it. Like there's a lot of online platforms, including School of Motion or Motion Design School. So anyone who has any sort of interest in making things move, I definitely check those out. But yeah, again, going back to being an illustrator with like this really like niche, weird style, and sort of like a limited understanding of motion design, and also wanting to get into the ad world, it was a bit tough. So I was doing a lot of like freelance graphic design work at the time, and a little bit of motion stuff for local startups. And after what seemed like a lot of endless applications, I got this job opportunity at a startup in the city. The agency's called Rack and Pinion, and they've gone on to do some really tremendous work. But it was quite different from the ad agency job that I was hoping that I would get. And I had to wear a lot of different hats. I was client facing and I was pitching right out of school, and it was kind of crazy. There was just 4 of us there. It was me, another intern, and 2 of the founders. And so I kind of got a real quick course in the business side of design. And after working there for 2 years, I felt confident enough to leap into freelancing. And I've been doing that for about 5 years since. And then going forwards into like talking about sort of like some dream jobs that I landed. When COVID hit, I was actually in the middle of working for a lot of not-for-profit companies and arts organizations. And when COVID hit, it was a huge loss for me, and all my clientele sort of dried up, and they were like, yeah, like, you know, with what's coming and what's heading, like we just don't have budget and we're shutting down a lot of our shows. There was a theater organization that I was working with, and so it was pretty heavy. And just like as a freelancer too, work can be a bit inconsistent. So I actually picked up this book knowing that I needed a bit of change. It's called The Freelance Manifesto, and it's geared towards motion designers, but I do think that it's a great read for anyone who has an interest in design in general. And what that book provided me with was the knowledge on how to find people, get in touch with them, get their emails, make client lists, get booked. And on top of that, I also decided that I really wanted to niche down my style. And so I really curated my website to be focused on character-based design and animation work. I think that was also like a huge help, because I think when you're dealing with agencies or studios or art directors, when they look at your website and they see a lot of like mix match stuff, or even if it's like slightly different, they don't really know what they're buying when they hire you. So I really curated my website so that when I present it to people, they look at it and they know exactly what they're getting. And after I checked out the Freelance Manifesto, I got busy on LinkedIn, and I basically made a crazy list of like hundreds of producers at different agencies all around the world, doesn't matter, and use some tools to locate emails that are, the Freelance Manifesto explains how you can find emails. And I just hit everyone up, really friendly, really nice, just saying, this is my website, I'm out here, maybe we can work together one day. And yeah, I got a few responses. And over the next few months, people who had missed my email would reach out, you know, thanks for sharing the work, we're gonna put you in our roster. And basically the work started growing from there. And the more work you get, the more you update your website, the more people see it. The word just sort of organically has been growing since COVID. And a friend of mine who's a creative director had an agency that was in touch with him looking for, the agency was leading Sony's holiday campaign series, and they needed a whole bunch of animation as a part of that campaign. And the animation project was so big that I needed to bring on a team, because for me to handle it myself over like a month or two, it was just going to be way too much. So yeah, I basically sort of scaled up. I brought a few people on and directed a whole animation series for Sony. And that's sort of how I landed my dream project. And, you know, going forward, I just continue to strive for excellent work and excellent relationships in everything I'm doing. And I think one thing that's really important is to just be kind and friendly with people, because you're working in an incredible community of really talented people. And just to keep that positive energy is really important. Let me just share my screen here, and I'll briefly, let's see. Oh shoot, I just got a new laptop, so it's telling me that I need to quit Zoom in order to share the contents of my screen. So I guess I can't share my screen, but yeah, if you're curious, you can go to my website, mippi.tv, and you can see some work there. I did have a little bit of a presentation to go over process, but I can basically summarize my process. So when you're animating, I'd use the analogy that it's like building a house. So when you're using like cement and bricks, and you're building upwards, there's only so far that you can go before you can go backwards, because once you start going backwards, you really need to destroy what you've built and like break the brick apart and start rebuilding. So with my clients, I try to have many checkpoints along the way and many sign-offs. So it's a really clear and distinct process. And there's like multiple checkpoints, but rather than going into the intricacies of like various aspects of sound design and all this stuff, I've sort of got it really simply laid out here, you know, into like the three main components, which are, you know, illustration, style frames, vector illustration, and then animation. So I think storyboarding is one of the most important aspects of animation. It essentially, you're taking the script and you're translating it into visuals, and the client really needs to be on board with that and to sign off on that. And once you've got everything storyboarded, it can bring you to the animatic, which is you basically take the frames of the storyboard and pair it with the music, and that will bring you to the picture lock. And I think the picture lock is one of the most important aspects of building an animation, because when your client wants to change something down the road, like, hey, we didn't want that guy walking down the street, we actually wanted him fighting a giant dinosaur in space, that's like a crazy huge jump. So I always try to say, you know, this is the picture lock. Like once we sign this off, the timing, the imagery, and the sound, it's locked, and we're going to move into vector illustration. And then once we have sign off on that, I'll start with style frames and color exploration. And, you know, that might be 1 or 2 or 3 rounds until they go, you know, this image, we love the colors, we love the vector style you're going for. This is great. Let's vectorize everything. And then we take all the frames from the storyboard and we'll vector it, get that to be overviewed. And usually that's a quicker sign off because they've already agreed on the style and they're usually happy with the way everything's illustrated. And from there, we'll move forward into rigging the characters, making them into sort of puppets that you can move around. And then after that, we just go into animation, and there's a couple rounds of revisions, and that's that. So unfortunately, I can't share my screen here because I just got a new laptop and I apparently don't have the permission set to share screen. But I hope that was helpful.
That's really cool, Michael. Actually, unpacking that process is really interesting, and this is the step-by-step aspect of it. And I think I might be able to share your reel if you'd like me to. I think I can. I've got. Do you want me to call that up? It's like this.
Yeah, sure. That would be cool.
Let me just see if I'll see if I can pop that up for you. Here we go. Is visible?
Yep. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's
Awesome.
that's basically what I do.
Cool, just a couple of quick themes I'd like to maybe pick up on your chat there, and especially like I think from the standpoint of the young people who want to get into creative industries. And I think the point you made about getting involved, like getting involved in the community, finding places where stuff's happening and meeting people. And, you know, I think that's one of those things that is kind of not really understood as being as important as it really is, you know?
Yeah.
And like, you know, in your career, it clearly was like a kind of almost like a crucial turning point, right? And you never know how that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's something as random as that. I mean, I saw that mentorship program, and you know, I might have just gone on to just do editorial illustration, which is totally cool. But as soon as I signed up for that mentorship program, it was like, it was just one of those strange moments where it was like they said we don't have anyone, and I was like pretty disappointed. And they came back months later and they're like, hey, you're kind of like out of here in like a couple weeks literally, but are you interested in meeting someone who doesn't really do exactly what you do, but in some ways they do, and maybe they can help you out. And yeah, I can't describe it very well other than it just being such a lucky incident, because it really changed the entire trajectory of what I was doing. I wasn't expecting animation. I wasn't thinking about it. And it just set the course for something really wonderful for me.
Yeah, but of course you had to be open to the possibility.
Exactly.
But you also did the work of getting out to the community and making the connections.
Yes.
Where that stuff could happen, right? So,
and that's a great point. Yeah, I think like that's a huge aspect of my personality that I think can really benefit people, where it's like to be open and alert and aware and ready to do something when you see it. So when Holly was talking about the NFT stuff that she's doing, that's a space that's, you know, it's the Wild West, and it's very interesting to me. I'm doing a lot of reading and a lot of research on it. I don't know too much about it, but it's something that is fascinating technology. And it's things like that, like you don't know where it will lead, you don't know what the opportunity is, but just to investigate things and be curious, I think is really important.
Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to pick up a little bit as well was, you know, when you're talking about your freelance career and the work you did in promoting your own work in your company, and you know, we tend to think of that as something that is the kind of thing that freelancers are more concerned with. But, you know, I think that broadly speaking, creative people aren't very good at self-promotion.
Yes, but getting booked is very difficult for creative people, as it was for me for 5 years of like maybe less than 5 years, but many years of inconsistent work. And it's to be honest with you, it's not that hard. It's like you just need to email a lot.
Yeah, well, and I think you know, the experience that you described is one that I think people kind of need to wrap their heads around, and which is that you're going to get a lot of rejection. Like you're going to get mostly rejection. I mean, you know, Zach and Logan, I'm sure can speak to this. Like, how many ideas die before you get one that goes live? And it's almost the same kind of thing with you know, with self-promotion and connecting yourself up to new work, is that you got to throw out a lot of lines. You know,
yeah. I mean, I've probably sent out thousands of email throughout, like thousands and thousands of emails, and I've heard back from who knows how many. But you know what they say too, it's like you just need like 10 clients or 20 clients. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You just need people who you like, who are paying you for the work that you do, and it's a great relationship. And if you can get 20 of that on a consistent basis, you'll be booked full time you'll be overbooked probably with 20 good connections.
Yeah, terrific. This has been great. I mean, I want to be a little conscious of time because we're running down. So, and I would like to get one more question out there that maybe we could just sort of cycle through each of you, and that is, you know, thinking about. Oh, here we go. Okay. Right. One just in front of we've just this one just in, and it's kind of a good one. So the question we have here is that is asking about, you know, from NFTs, vinyl records, ATM, motion graphics, and this breadth of media that you have all worked in. In what way does the medium that you're actually working in affect your creativity? And sort of looking forward, how do you see the developing spheres of things like NFTs or maybe the metaverse affecting or impacting or driving your creative impulses? Anybody want to take that one?
Sure, I can jump in first.
Sure, Logan.
I think one of the things I love about the advertising industry is it's always evolving. You're never doing the same thing every day. You're always kind of looking at these new technologies that are coming out, like NFTs. And all of a sudden you have this whole new platform, this whole new kind of area that you can play in for different ideas and concepts. So it's a really interesting thing, kind of seeing what's coming out and what's new in the world and how you can kind of use that in whatever creative that you're coming up with. So there's been a lot of recent campaigns that have been coming out for NFTs that have kind of inspired, the kind of next wave of creative. And I think what it does is it opens up your mind to be able to come up with new concepts, to be able to push further. And then, as the next thing comes out within the next few years, again, that just kind of opens it up to you have a new canvas to play with. What can I do with this next new technology?
Yeah, and kind of bouncing off of that, like I say, like it's always exciting when a new media comes up, because for that exact reason of like, okay, this is a new avenue to like express ideas. But to kind of like answer one of the first parts of that question, like sometimes the medium does inform the idea, but sometimes it's also the opposite. Sometimes the idea comes first and you kind of bring it to new life in a new medium that's emerging and new. Like I'm sure a lot of the NFT ideas that are coming out right now are based off of insights that they were doing for other digital stuff or activations. Or like, oh, but now there's this new space. How does this idea come to life in that space now? And it's just a really interesting thought process whenever something like that emerges, to see like where it could lead these banks of insights and ideas that you kind of have in the back of your head from all these ideas you're already working on.
Yeah, there's a sort of tension between, are we a solution in search of a problem, or are we got insights that can now be expressed in a way that they couldn't be done before, and possibilities exist now that can help us sort of fulfill these things. Very, very cool. Holly, Michael, any thoughts on either of those? Any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Michael put it quite well, saying that it's a bit of like the Wild West out there in terms of like even looking into that space, I think can be, and like the whole progression of like digital art and what that is, and where the value is in that. I know there's like a lot of kind of content on that around the internet to dig into, and I think it can be overwhelming, because I don't really think anyone knows what it is or where it's going to go. But I think in terms of like the medium that you're working with, like I feel like we're all like fairly young here, so even the progression of like 5 to 8 years ago till now, I feel like the industry has changed massively, definitely towards like digital outputs, and just like what you can be capable of executing in all these different spaces that creativity can live in. So even from I don't know, like I remember when I graduated, we were still playing about with like letter set and stuff, and that feels like ancient history now. So yeah, I don't know, I think it's about kind of like, I mean, maybe not keeping on top of everything, because there's a lot of kind of stuff going on at the moment, but I think we're in kind of a really interesting place at the moment where especially when it comes to like motion and things that can exist digitally, that there is now kind of like outlets that exist for those things to live in, and it only almost like allows for more freedom for ideas to come to life, like some of the work that Zach and Logan were showing, of how it's these kind of like brand interactions and these executions that aren't necessarily just a big billboard. You can kind of get a lot more out of them, and I think it'll be interesting to see where the industry is in like 5 years, because I feel like it's going to be unrecognizable from where it is at the moment. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, in terms of like metaverse and NFT, stuff like that, I don't even want to take any stabs at where any of that's going because I have no idea. But if we're discussing like Medium and its impact on like the output of the work, and yeah, I think there's two things at play there, like Medium and talent. And that's like the beauty of creativity is like with the medium you're using, like let's just say you're using After Effects with like Illustrator like I do, that's going to dictate the output of the work that you're doing. So it's going to be flat motion-based vector graphics, and your ability as well also dictates the output. So yeah, you're sort of like playing, when you're creating and you're making, you're playing a game within these constraints, like these restrictions. And like, I'm not making holograms. So I might one day, but the work is definitely going to look a certain way due to the medium. Yeah.
Yep. It was a great quote I had once heard once from Brian Eno. The limitations of technology are indications of the texture of an era. So you know what I mean. So that if you want to show something, what does something look like in the 80s? You're going to use something that looks like the limitations of VHS technology, and that kind of thing. So it's kind of exactly what you're talking about. And you can think of it as a limitation, or it's like, or I think the way you put it is even better. It's a game. You're working inside the rules, and you can play that and go as deeply as you want inside those limitations in that set of rules, and create all kinds of stuff. It's just depending on how deep you want to go and how talented you are and willing to go deeply on it. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing about developing media, developing tools essentially as we go forward in this thing. And so, the people who are watching this now, who are going to be the future of this business, who knows what they're going to get to play with, but it's going to be cool, I think. Yeah. Again, I want to be very conscious of time, and we're running a bit over, so I don't want to take us any further. But I just want to thank all of you for being here and being part of this. A fantastic discussion, and it's delightful to see all of your amazing work. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Vicky.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. That was